I just scooped out a delicious piece of breakfast casserole, and let me tell you something. This is a ham and cheese croissant breakfast casserole with roasted broccoli. It's really delicious. It all gets thrown together, baked in the oven, and you're gonna see why you're gonna wanna make this. Let's go. Picture eating a delicious ham and cheese croissant, instead making it into a ham and cheese croissant egg casserole. That's what this is. And it's really delicious, it's really fun. I love an egg casserole, especially when it can be a little bit elevated, which is what this is. So we're gonna start by roasting some things. Instead of just sauteing them on the stove, we're gonna roast it all. We're gonna do some onion. We're gonna do some broccoli that I started on. Now the thing is, I always wanna make sure you know, I don't like food waste for one. But when you get broccoli and they have those stems, don't just throw those out. Chop those up to be roasted. That's just broccoli. It's delicious nutrition, it's health, it's fiber. Don't throw the stems out. Chop them up, put them in whatever you're making, roast them, saute them, throw in tons of flavor. Now the reason we're doing broccoli is, okay, yes, you're right. You wouldn't usually have broccoli inside of a croissant if you're eating it. But a little bit of green is nice. It adds a little bit more flavor, texture, adds some interest more. I think you need color with everything you're eating. So when it comes to mushrooms, I'm gonna use shiitake. Use whatever you want. If you want button mushrooms, cremini mushrooms. I like shiitake because they have a little bit more heft to them. I did take out, they're kind of big shiitakes, honestly. I took out the stems. The stems can just have a little bit of tenuous fiber, which you can see here, and they're not fun to eat. So I just put them aside, and I use those in stock, actually. So I'm giving these some nice, rough, big chops because you know, and I know, what do mushrooms do when they cook? They really cook down. They break down a lot. So having them in big pieces is okay because when I'm done, I still wanna make sure we see them. I still wanna make sure we know they are there and that they're in the egg casserole. I'm not trying to hide anything. So once all this is on here, we're gonna give it a good dose of olive oil and we're gonna roast this. Now I'm using olive oil in this case because we're not gonna do too long of roast. We're gonna do enough to break it down, start really adding a little bit of flavor. I also am gonna add, of course, salt and pepper. The reason I'm doing this instead of putting it on the stove and just sauteing it, I want a little bit more flavor. I want that caramelization to start. We're gonna add salt and pepper, and I want the oven to do the work. It's gonna be on anyway for the egg casserole. So then I'm gonna toss it just to make sure that oil gets everywhere, because that's the important thing here when you're roasting something. Make sure the oil is coating everything. Make sure it's all getting the salt and the pepper, whatever it is. Now we're gonna spread this out. It's not completely an even layer, but you can see it's close. But this is also when you check to make sure you don't have big pieces that need to be broken down even more. That's perfect. Now we're gonna throw this right into an oven. We're gonna let it roast a bit. We're gonna get our custard ready, which is really what an egg casserole is. And it's gonna be good. So I have my eggs here. I'm cracking in the last one. They're beautiful eggs. You know, buying good eggs, it really does make a difference. Look at those beautiful yolks on them. They're just gorgeous. Make sure, I always think of my mom because she would always go through my eggs and she'll come over and be like, Caleb, there's a little bit of white left in there. So I have to do that to suffice her. So once the eggs are in there, I first like to whisk them just to make sure they're gonna evenly combine with everything else. So just break up some of the yolks. It's kind of fun. There's something satisfying about it. I think an egg casserole, we a lot of times overcomplicate it and we think, oh, what shall I put in it? You know, egg casserole can really be whatever you want it to be. The important part is having good, delicious ingredients. So you can see I'm starting to have a cohesive color. We're getting it all whisked together. Eggs are magical. Think of all the things you can do with them. Savory, sweet. I'm entranced by eggs. So once we have it started, we're gonna add in some whole milk. Now I say whole milk because I like the richness, I like the fat, I like the flavor, that's the important part. And with that, we're also adding in some heavy cream. Now I'm adding in both whole milk and heavy cream, not only just like heavy cream because it'd be too rich, you wanna offset the two. So I'm pouring it in, and we just need to whisk that together till it's somewhat combined. This is how you make a custard. This is really the beginning of it. So we're just whisking this until it's completely smooth, which you can see now, this is why we call it a custard. You have your eggs, your milk, your cream. It really is a custard at this point. I'm of course gonna season with some salt and pepper. You know, you have to layer your seasoning. So we seasoned the vegetables that are in the oven roasting, but you also need to do the same with your eggs, everything else. So the components that go in this are delicious. Remember I mentioned it's kind of like a ham and cheese croissant with a few additions. So one of those things is gonna be cheese. So I've been shredding some Swiss cheese. Now the reason I shred it is because sometimes when you use just pre-shredded cheese, it has like some weird additives that keep it so the shreds stay separated, and it's just kind of gross, and I don't like how it always melts into things. So I like a block of cheese. It's actual just cheese. And you can see it just shreds beautifully, and it's really easy. Now the bread in this one, instead of just plain old bread, which is doable, if you wanna do that, is croissant. I happen to go to a great bakery that's local, Deluxe Bakery in Iowa City, but you can get croissants so many places. If they're not from a specialty bakery, just find croissants at any store you would go to, which you can find. What I like about them is they have a butteriness. So we're just cutting them up in big pieces, kind of like we would bread. So big 1-inch pieces. And what that does is create these wonderful pockets of this bready, beautiful flavor within this wonderful egg casserole. And I like them kind of chunky and irregular because I want people to see what it was. Now, like I said, if you don't have croissant, you can use bread, and that will be good. It just won't be quite as good. This just ups it a level. It just really creates something amazing. Now, also a day old or a stale bread is always good too. So like these I actually let sit out overnight just to kind of get a little dry. I think those things can always help. So I'm gonna start by throwing these right in the custard. And then we're gonna wait until our vegetables are done to throw those in, obviously, and let them cool slightly. But with this, I'm gonna also add in most of the cheese, leaving a little bit for the top to sprinkle on. And so you can already, I think you're already imagining how good this is gonna be. So I'm gonna put that in, let it stir, and let that start soaking in some of that wonderful and beautiful custard. And then the vegetables come out, we're gonna mix it all together, throw it in a casserole dish. It's almost done. So this has been sitting. I took out the vegetables and I've let them cool off a little bit. You don't want to put them hot into anything egg. You know, the reason we cook a vegetable beforehand is all the excess water a vegetable holds on to would leach out into the eggs and get watery and gross. So when you roast them or saute them, you're leaching some of that out and getting rid of it, but also you're adding flavor with the color. It's just like they brown a little bit. I love that. Now I forgot to add my mustard earlier, so I'm adding some mustard. A lot of times a casserole will take dry mustard maybe. I think Dijon has so much more flavor. It does have more flavor. This flavor it adds, you don't notice it, you don't pick it out. So if you're someone that says, well, I don't like mustard, don't worry, you won't know it's in there. It really is good though. So usually I would stir that into just the custard, but just stir it in here to a little portion of it, and then I'll just fold it in now to everything. That mustard makes a huge difference in the end. Look at that beautiful custard though. It's a beautiful thing. So we're gonna add in the ham. I'm using diced ham. Guess what? It's kind of whatever you want, but I said this is a play on ham and cheese croissant. So we're playing with that, and that's why we're doing ham. You can do leftover ham from the holidays if you happen to have some, or anything, or you can just buy some ham steak and slice it up. Then I'm gonna put in all of our vegetables that we just roasted, which to me is just perfect. I'm gonna put them all right in here, and then we just stir it all together. So we have the vegetables, we have the ham, we have those beautiful croissants in here, which I think we can already tell that this is gonna be a winner, right? This is what I like about an egg casserole is this is a great way to have a meal. So a weeknight meal, an egg casserole. You can put this together the morning of, the night before, and bake it, 8 hours later. That's the best part. So we're gonna pour it all into a greased baking dish. Let all that goodness go right in. Now the important part here is you want all that residual egg in there too. You don't want to leave any of that behind. You don't want any of the cheese, any of the egg. So make sure you scrape it all out, because that all is what's going to make this delicious and hearty and just filling, and that's what you want. So somewhat you may need to do a little bit of adjustment to make sure it all gets in there. And I will even, this is me, I will strategically make sure I put a couple pieces of like the broccoli on top. I think that's the beautiful color and I want to see that. Again, I don't like to hide things. I don't like to say, oh, I'm putting this in here and you're not going to see it. No, I want you to see it. I want you to see there's mushrooms and all the pieces of everything. So get them kind of pushed out to the edges. My final amount of cheese that I saved back, I'm just going to put it over the top. It just finishes it off. Gives it that nice, wonderful meltiness in the end, and hopefully it will brown a little bit in the oven too. So we're gonna add that. Now we're gonna pop this back in the oven, let it bake until those eggs are set. We'll be good to go. Well, you can see I took it out of the oven, let it sit a few minutes, but look how beautiful it is. I love how the croissant pieces peek out and give you those brown, crusty bits. The broccoli is there, and you can see it got even more toasted. The cheese melted on top. I love an egg casserole, and I love this egg casserole, and I think you're gonna see why. It's just a beautiful way to have, if you're having company, this is great, or if it's just a family, look at all that goodness right in there. It's not too dry, it still has moisture to it, which you want. It's that play of moisture to dry to the bread. it just looks good. I had to look at it. And then you can just eat it. So this can be served alone. It can be served on a brunch, kind of whatever works well. So it's still a little warm. I love it. What I love is you get the butteriness from the croissants, which is like super delicious. But then you have the pieces of the broccoli. You have the, okay, I'm sorry, I just have to try the broccoli to make sure I know because, you know what I like? Roasting them beforehand gave them more flavor. It browned them, crisped them just a little bit. You get the smokiness from the ham that starts permeating throughout. And that Swiss cheese, that is the cherry on top because it really adds a nice flavor. It has a good seasoning to it. It's just a delicious egg casserole, and you can see how simple it is. Egg casserole is super simple. This one took one extra step by roasting some things beforehand, but otherwise you'd have to cook them on the stove in a skillet anyway. So the oven did all the work. We dumped it together, we baked it, and now we have a beautiful casserole for it. That's what it should be about. Food should be approachable, doable, and delicious. So I hope you share this video around so everyone else can see how approachable and doable this is. Because if I can do it, anybody can do it. Check my website, wiseguy.com, for this recipe. All my other recipes, they're all on my website. Printable, use them, share them. That's what you do with food. Enjoy.